My name is Don Crim. I'm a Wyandotte County Master Gardener since 2001. I'm battling a little bit of laryngitis today, so bear with me on my voice a little bit. I'm originally from Iowa, a little small farming town called Stanhope. They used to stand and hope that the train would come. It was only a little tiny town. I'm a graduate of Iowa State University, and was employed by Farming Industries for 35 years. So I guess you can call me an old fossil. I used to say I wasn't sure whether I was an Iowegian or a Kansan, but the number of years in Kansas outranks Iowa, so I'm really a Kansan now. In 2016, when we went to visit Holland, we were celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary. Our daughter and son-in-law gifted us a river cruise to Holland. It was a 10-day cruise. We loved every minute of it. We had things we liked about it. There was only 190 people on the riverboat, and we had a lot of different port stops. We got to see cities and do things that you can't do with a big tour thing. So we really liked it. The riverboat we were on was called the Bragi, and it was really nice. And these are a couple pictures from that. When we were in Amsterdam, that was our first stop. They had a floating flower market. It's the world's only flower market. It was really interesting. This was formed in 1862. And at that time, the merchants would bring their flowers or their products by boat to this area. Now they have permanently anchored those areas, and the merchants bring their merchandise via a truck now. Okay, here's some pictures of some of the shops that are in that floating flower market, and we were really impressed with the beauty of the different flowers that they were offering, as well as other souvenirs. Well, now it's working. One of the first areas that we were going to look at was a tulip farm. It was located in a town called Sloopdorp. It's blocked off up at the top there, but it's at the top of the screen. It's about an hour north of Amsterdam. The family we visited in Horn is about halfway up, you can see, and we'll talk about them here in just a little bit. So these first two areas are real close to Amsterdam. This is an aerial view of a lot of the tulip farms. It's really a beautiful view to see. And I might also say pictures that we have don't adequately show the beauty of it. It just gives you an idea. The first farm that we visited, or the tulip farm we visited, is the CM Munster tulip farm. This was the entrance up here to their facility. This is the owner, part owner. She and her husband own this farm. They served us coffee and pastries when we first arrived, and then she told us about their operation. This building is kind of out of sorts here. I'll just put it in. They also grow mushrooms. And so this building is for growing of mushrooms alongside of their tulip fields. Tulips, there's two ways that tulips are grown in Holland. The first one I'm going to talk about is what the majority is. They're grown for bulb production. They're planted in October to December, just like when we plant our bulbs here. Growers use nets at the time of the planting to aid in the harvest, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. They practice crop rotation, just like the farmers here in the United States do. They rotate with different tulip varieties and as well as different other spring and fall bulbs. Good drainage is essential for the growing of the tulips there. So they keep their water levels lower. They don't let it get too wet unless it floods. And that's another story. In the spring, the growers walk the fields to inspect it for viruses, infections, or irregularities. All of the bulb fields, and this must be quite a task, are all inspected by the Dutch Department of Agriculture. And that's to assure the quality of the bulbs that you get that are exported or sold. Tulip blooms begin to fade probably in the the middle of April. And at this time, they start to cut off the blooms. And I'll show you this. That's a heartbreaking scene to see. Cutting the tops off allows the remaining plant that's there, the green leaves, to produce the bulb that they want, because it takes its energy from the flower. Now it's going to the bulb. Some of you may remember Alan Stevens, who was the head of the Olathe test station. He would always say, when you go to the nursery and you see those beautiful annual flowers and you buy it, the first thing you want to do when you get to your house is set it on the front porch, enjoy it for a day, and then cut the flower off and plant it. That's a very hard thing to do. I have trouble doing that too. But for Mother Nature, that's exactly what you need to do, because the plant needs the energy to go down to the roots. The tulip people are doing the same thing. They want that energy to develop a good size, large bulb to boost a good tulip. The harvest takes place in June to July. The dry bulbs are processed by a machine that sifts out the sand that's kind of stuck to the bulb. Clean bulbs are graded by size. Large bulbs are sold to customers in the Netherlands and around the world. The smallest bulbs are replanted in the following fall, to get them to be a bigger size. And this is amazing. All of the exported tulip bulbs go through a rigorous inspections prior to being exported. They include MRI scanning. They have pre-inspections by the USDA if they're coming to the United States, or Canadian inspections if they're going to Canada, before they ever go anywhere. This is kind of some information about what the amount of planting. They list everything as in hectares. And since I am not a very good metric to measure thing, I went ahead and converted it to acres that people can kind of understand. In 2008, they had 28,170 acres devoted to tulips and other spring flowers. In 2016, the year that we were there, they had 32,617 acres. In 2020, they've had the highest number of acres of 36,819 acres. They said for 2021, it went down a little bit to 35,583. They said the COVID had an effect on that. So that's why it went down a little bit. Whoop, I didn't want that. This is a big farm planting operation. This is a tulip field, and this is the harvesting stuff. So you see, it's a big operation. The other way that they are grown is for cut flowers. Basically, the tulips are grown for cut flowers the same beginning process as are the bulbs. Growers start to plant the bulbs again in October until December, when the soil temperature decreases to about 50 degrees. If it's warmer than that, they have trouble with disease. And so that's why they have to wait for it to get down to 50 degrees to plant them. And temperature is the vital factor. Bulbs are then harvested in June and July. And most of the tulips in Holland are grown for bulbs, but tulips for flower shops are grown in nurseries. And this tulip farm, they sold a lot of their bulbs to owners of greenhouses so they could grow them for the cut flowers. It takes 4 weeks from the time they get the nursery to get the bulb to get where they got the cut flower. I didn't know this. Contrary to common belief, the tulip is not native to Holland. They are originally from the central mountainous region of Asia. And they came in about in 1500s. I'm gonna mess up this guy's name. It's Carolus Calusis. He's a botanist from Leiden, Netherlands. And he's the one that was credited for bringing tulips to Holland. The Munster farm has 86 to 98 acres of tulip bulbs grown for tulips in their greenhouses, but also for export and be sold to colleagues with greenhouses. They have a wide assortment of tulips that they grow. They have single tulips, double, and parrot tulips. Every year they make their selection for color and other things that they know that the buyers want when they select the tulips for sale. This shows the netting I'll talk about here in the next slide. They still have some traditional methods of drill and bed systems, but the high percentage of the bulbs are now grown with tubular nets. One of the main reasons is because of the high cost at harvest time and problem getting casual help. Some time ago, the schools changed their holiday schedule, so schools are not out until the mid-July after the tulip harvest. So they had to look for alternative ways to do this. And they settled on these. In 1992, they started to use these nets. And in 6 years, it increased from 0 to over 7,000 acres that are devoted. They also said that 80% of the clay soils, tulips that are grown on clay soil, are using nets. This method makes it a quick and easy way to harvest the bulbs with very little damage to them. Most growers have opted for smaller nets because it requires a smaller tractor to harvest and pull them up. The first phase is when they come, they'll pull the nets up and lay it to allow the sun and wind to dry them. The second phase, they'll come through with a machine that lifts the nets, cuts them open, and drops the bulbs in a bulk bin. This is a sad sight. All those beautiful blooms, they come through, but you see, it's not a perfect thing. And they start this in April, and it'll go through and cut those off. This is what they do when the machine misses them. Now, I did, when I was growing up, detasseled corn in Iowa. And that was hand done. But that was walking. Then I saw that they had, after I got older and left, the younger people were able to sit on a tractor with a mounted thing where they could sit and pull the tassels. But it reminds me very much of what we used to do with detasseling of corn. That's what it looks like when they're all done. And so there now the plant can divide it or provide all of its energy to the bulb now. This is their processing operation. These people are picking out the tulip bulbs and plants that they don't like. They're the undesirables. They sort them according to size, and I'm sure there's varieties of this, the type of thing where they're all sorted. I'm guessing these are the small ones that are replanted again in the fall to get bigger. Right here, the tulips are ready to go to the auction house. This is a huge building. The Asmere Tulip Auction is the largest tulip market auction in the world. During the growing season, 20 million flowers and plants each day go through this place. They follow what they call the Dutch auction process, where they start with a price high and then keep lowering it. The buyers have to decide when they want to jump in. If they jump in too quickly, they've paid too much, but they got product. If you wait too long, you may go home empty-handed. And so it's a tough thing to decide when you want to jump in and buy your particular tulips. And by the way, this building is the 4th largest building in the world. Pretty big operation. Also, when we went to the tulip farm, we had an opportunity to go to a wind generator, independently owned a wind turbine. The Dutch government for a long time was allowing individuals to have a wind turbine. They had a license for 10 years. But they got so many complaints for and moving shadows that the government allow individuals. They'll have to be in a single line, and we'll show that here in a minute, so that they're in an area. They're also doing a lot of offshore out in the ocean. I don't know what that does to the sea life, but again, they're looking for ways to utilize wind generation. This is she and her husband own this. They also have some gardening and truck gardening work that they're doing between flowers and vegetables, as well as the point we're going to talk about a little bit later. That's the level of sea level. You can see that their farm is below sea level. 60% of Holland is below sea level. And we'll talk about that when we get in just a little bit. That's been a problem. I'd like to come downstairs. She told me that there was at least 200 steps on that. And it is a very long climb. I don't think I could get past 10. But anyhow, that's a long haul. This up here is a monitor that monitors the wind speed, the temperature, and every other parameter that the generator is doing. Here's how they look now with turbines in a straight line. The Dutch are trying to meet the Economic Union set target of producing 14% of the total electricity from renewable sources by 2020. Now, this was as of in 2016. In addition to the wind farms built onshore, 2 wind farms have been built out in the sea. A record 153 wind turbines were erected in 2015, bringing the total wind turbines in the Netherlands to 2,200. The Netherlands in 2016 now produces enough energy to power 2.4 million households. And that I've already told you about that, about the individual owning. Since 2017, all Dutch high-speed trains are using wind power to operate. One turbine running for 1 hour powers a train for 120 miles. The rail system serves up to 750,000 passengers a day. The Netherlands has triplicated its total installed wind power capacity from 2,149 megawatts in 2018 or 2008 to around 7,801 megawatts in 2021. Europe is one of the largest regions with the largest wind power capacity worldwide. As of October 2022, wind power in the Netherlands has an installed capacity of 8,304 megawatts. 29.6% of this is based on offshore wind turbines. In 2019, wind turbines provided the country with 12% of its electricity demand during the year. In March of 2022, the Dutch government announced that by 2030, offshore wind generation will become the Netherlands' biggest power source based on 21 gigawatts of installed capacity. And again, just for a reminder, 1 gigawatt equals 1,000 megawatts. 1 megawatt equals 1,000 kilowatts. Which probably doesn't mean anything to any of us. But that's how it's being measured. With an average of 1.7 gigawatts generated per day in the Netherlands, wind powers 5.7 million Dutch homes. At the end of 2015, there were 2,525 onshore wind turbines generating a total of 3,000 megawatts. That's around 5% of the Netherlands' total requirement. By 2020, they need to have wind power capacity of 6,000 megawatts. This means capacity must be increased over 3,000 megawatts. So they had a ways to go. An average turbine has a capacity of 2 to 3 megawatts. So the Netherlands need roughly 1,000 to 1,500 new onshore wind turbines. We're going to go here to Kinderdijk. And again, you can see this is Amsterdam is really the base. We're going to go to Keukenhof. It's located again south of Amsterdam. This is how they used to do it. It was a windmill. As I said earlier, 60% of the Netherlands is below sea level. Many of us have not even been in a windmill to see what the interior looks like. This is the living quarters. This particular windmill was built in 1738. And this is the owner operator of that windmill. This happened to be the tour director for Viking that was talking to him. These windmills are not doing any water movement now. About the only thing that they're using is some of them are using to grind or mill grain. You'll see windmills in cities around, and that's what they're using it for, is mainly for grinding of grain, for milling for wheat or whatever. This is incredible. These Archimedes screws are used to transfer water from the low-lying body into an irrigation ditch. This pumping station was built in 1972. These 3 screws have the capability of moving 365,632 gallons per minute. I can't even fathom how much that is. This pumping station does the work that 19 windmills used to do. Amazing. This is a little folklore. Kinderdijk means child dike. And one of the reasons they say it got that is from a folklore. They had a big flood called the St. Elizabeth flood in 1421. The area around Kinderdijk was not flooded. So someone went out after the weather subsided to go down to the dike and see if there was what damage was there. They observed a wooden cradle out in the water, and it was kind of bobbing back and forth. And as it got closer, they saw there was a cat inside the cradle that was jumping back and forth to keep the cradle balanced. As it got closer, they saw that there was a baby. They had a baby on the inside, and it was dry and nice and sleeping. And so that's a folklore. They've written a book about it. Don't know if anything about this is true, but that's the story that they're sticking to. Here you can see the offshore wind turbines. As I said, they've had trouble with floods. In 1953, they had a major flood. There were 1,836 people drowned. The problem was it came at night, and they didn't have the warning systems that we have today with the television, with the radio, with the social media, with all of the other electronic things that we have today. They did not have. So that's why so many were lost. Now, the solid areas there are the areas that were flooded. The solid areas are where the levees were destroyed. The arrows indicate the areas where the water went over the levees and inundated the land. I took this picture, and I think it's an amazing picture. This upper part is the North Sea. This is the levee, and this is the Netherlands. So you can see what their problem is with water. Water everywhere. They undertook a project to never have this happen again. and it's called the Delta Works Project. And they wanted to protect a lot of the area of the land around the Rhine-Meuse Scheldt Delta from the sea. The works consist of dams, sluices, locks, dikes, levees, and storm surge barriers. The aim of the dams, sluices, and storm sewers was to shorten the Dutch coastline, therefore reducing the number of dikes that had to be raised. By shortening the coastline, fewer dikes would have to be reinforced. This reduced the length of the dikes exposed to the sea by 430 miles. That's significant to them. The works were declared finished almost 50 years later in 1997. The total cost, and I don't have that converted, 600 to 900 million euros. So some of us familiar with euros and do a quick calculation. This is a bridge that, over where the locks are. Pretty amazing. When we were in Horn, as I said, we had a small riverboat that had only 190 people. Not everyone went on the tour. We had an opportunity to go visit a family in Horn, and they divided us into groups of 5 or 6, which was really nice. And I'm sure it was really good for the families that we were visiting, that they didn't have 50 people come running into their house. I misplaced the names of these 2 people, but the man is a retired attorney and his wife is a retired school teacher. Everywhere you go up there, they got to give you coffee. So they served us coffee and apple pie, which was out of the world. They was very, very good. This is looking out their window for their dining area. This is our tour group in here. This is the man telling us about their operation. They told us about their family and their life that they had in Horn and Amsterdam. And they asked us about our families and what we were doing and what our stuff. So we had a good exchange between 2 different cultures. Here he's talking about his backyard garden that he was very proud of. This is a view of his backyard garden. Not very big, but it's a small country. Also, bear in mind that this was in the middle of April. So the only flowers that were up were really the spring flowering bulbs. Oops. And see, you can see her tulips there, and there's some tulips in there. He had some brambles along the fence there. One other area that we visited was Antwerp. Antwerp was also one of the diamond capital of the world, so to speak. But he said, don't go to anywhere and think you're going to find a bunch of diamonds, because it's mainly all wholesale there. But I threw this in because this is the oldest building in Antwerp. It was built in the 15th century, or 14th, I'm sorry, the 6th, yeah, that's it, the 13th century. Then it was rebuilt in the 16th century, and it served as a prison. Then in 1863, it was used as a maritime museum, and that's what it is today. It's a museum, but it's really a very old building. Do they have what? I think it's when they rebuilt. That the newer part was on top. This is the part we really enjoyed. They had a food tour that you could taste different Dutch foods in Antwerp. This young lady was our tour guide that took us around. Pat is sampling some anise liqueur. Neither one of us are very fond of anise liqueur, but I know a lot of people are. This is the store that provided the samples of the liqueur, and they had some flowers, some pansies and stuff out front of their store. Oh, I get hungry every time I see this. That Dutch chocolate is wonderful. That store had hundreds of different kinds of chocolate. We each were able to pick out 2 or 3 kinds of chocolate that we could enjoy ourselves. We went to a beer garden to sample some craft beers. This is the tasting room. This is the beer garden area. They had some of the common labels of some of the common beers on the wall, and this is the entrance to the tasting room. I show this. Belgium was proud that they had over 200 craft beers that they, I guess what you want to brew or manufacture. And in Bruges, they had an outdoors display of those 200 beers. And so that's not in Antwerp, but I threw that in just to show that the different kinds of beers they had. Those look like French fries, but those emphatically, they're not French fries, they're Belgian fries. The Belgian fries, they have stores you can just go and get the Belgian fries. There's nothing fancy about them, but the trick is they fry them twice. The first time they cook them is to make them soft and cooked through and tender. Then hours later, or whenever the customer comes in to buy it, they fry it again to make them golden brown and crispy. Any idea what she's put on top of her fries? What? It's mayonnaise. Mayonnaise. That would be an acquired taste for me. Here's a close-up view of those Belgian fries, and I can attest that they taste pretty good. Now, here are the 3 beers that we were sampling. The Deconic, they say, was the most popular, and I like that beer a lot. Tasted well. I didn't care so much for this one, and this one was all right. These are their special serving glasses that they have for those particular beers. At lunch in Antwerp, we went to a meat market and a sandwich shop. We got a sausage and bread sandwich along the side there, and it was very good. A Belgian waffle. They're different than the Belgian waffles we see here.
Okay, right there. Good luck.
They're not any round. I didn't see any round waffle. I like to watch Andre Rieu Orchestra, and he'll have guests will be eating at a table, and they'll be having looks like that. That's the Belgian waffle. This is from the waffle factory off of the market square there in Antwerp. In these Antwerpese handies, the Antwerp bakers make some excellent cookies in the shape of a hand. It is the symbol of the city, and it's looked upon like an official shield of Antwerp. The name Antwerp means hand thrown. The cookies date back to 1934. Here's the folklore. Droon Antigoon is a Flemish folklore character. He was a mythical giant who lived in Antwerp, guarding a bridge on the Scheldt River. He exacted a toll from those crossing the river. For those that refused, he cut one of their hands off and threw it in the river. Eventually, Antigoon was slain by a young Roman soldier named Bravo, who cut off the giant's hand and flung it into the river. And you can't really see to the top, but right there, he's got the giant's hand in his hand. So that's where it comes. The word Antwerp is hand thrown, is from this folklore about the giant being killed. I threw this in. This is in Bruges. It's in the Church of Our Lady. This is a Michelangelo statue of the Madonna and Child. It's the only Michelangelo statue out of Italy. At the time, he was having a dispute with the church in Italy, and somehow a guy in Bruges bought it or got it to Bruges. Just an interesting piece of history. A popular delicacy in the Netherlands is raw herring. Not my cup of tea. I relate a story that Rick Steves, I don't know how many of you have ever heard of him. He's on the public television, excuse me, and he has tours all through Europe. And he was in Amsterdam one time, and they showed him go up to one of these canal side stands that sold raw herring. So he went in and he asked the proprietor, he said, how do the people in Amsterdam eat the raw herring? He said, one or two ways. Whole, like a goldfish, or pieces. So he said, I'll take pieces. So they gave him a piece, a plate of pieces. He ate it, and the proprietor said, well, how'd you like it? It was good, but I'll never have it again. That's kind of my feeling now, but that's just me. Here are the pieces that they would be serving. In Amsterdam, we went to the Van Gogh Museum. This was a very popular restaurant near the Van Gogh Museum. It's called the Pantry. Their specialty was mashed potatoes, sauerkraut, and sausage. And that's what we had. And as you can see, that there's people outside and there's people inside. When we were in Bruges, we went and stopped at a deli and had a deli sandwich. And excuse me, and it had it was a sausage sandwich, and we had for dessert a Belgian waffle. What else? And Pat had bananas on the top. I had whipped cream, low cal. As I said, you can't talk about Holland unless you talk about Keukenhof Gardens. That's where it's located, just southwest or southeast of southwest, I guess, of Amsterdam. Keukenhof Gardens has been referred to as the Garden of Europe. It's one of the largest flower gardens in the world. And there's good reason it has that name. That was the most spectacular garden that Pat and I have ever seen. Pictures do not do justice to it. You have to see it in person to really see the beauty of it. The pictures will give you an idea, but it's really spectacular. They're only open 8 weeks a year. from mid-May or from mid-March to mid-May, and they get 800,000 people a year visit that garden. There are more than 7 million tulips in bloom, with a total of 800 varieties on, on 79 acres. The gardens are located on a 15th century hunting ground. The garden was established in 1949 by then Mayor of Lees, and the idea was to present a flower exhibit where growers from all over the Netherlands and Europe could show off their hybrids and help with the Dutch export industry. The Netherlands is the #1 exporter of flowers in the world. This was my wife's dream, was to get to Holland. So that's why it's so special. To me, that looks like a, a dandelion seed head or an allium. But in any case, it's pretty nice looking water fountain. Lots of buses. For 800,000 people, you have to have a lot of buses. The kissing boy and girl. This is a photo op thing. That kissing boy and girl are the #1 souvenir that you can get there. I have asked both at the Netherlands and at Pella, and nobody knows how that got started. But it is very popular. People taking pictures of them. Here you can see there are the statues or the figurines. This is a display they had from the Delft pottery. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Delft pottery. It's very made in Holland, and it has this hand-painted blue color. They're not cheap, but they are really nice looking pieces of pottery. And so they had a display in Keukenhof. They have a mosaic garden. They change this design every year. This was the design that was there when we were there. There are some designs from previous years. Anybody recognize this? That's Van Gogh. So they honor because he was from Amsterdam. I don't want to meet, whoops. I don't want to meet the guy that can put his foot in that thing. That's one big shoe. Again, that was another photo op. People could go in and sit inside the shoe and they would take pictures of them. Here are some of the tulip beds. Notice this guy, he's planting some tulips, and it looks like on the shape of the rabbit. I guess with April, that's Easter and the Easter bunny. There are 4 conservatories in there. They all are named for the monarchy. This is Netherlands and Belgium is ruled by a king, and Alexander Wilhelm is one. The orange, that's the color of the royal family. And then they have Juliana, which was the mother of the present king. This first building had orchids. I have never seen so many orchids in one place in all my life. And they were beautiful. Kind of an unusual display of putting orchids in pants. This building was devoted to the tulips, hyacinths, and hydrangeas, as well as other flowers. They told us on the ship that this colored tulip was a result of a virus. But people liked it so much, growers and breeders developed it. And now it's part of the tulip supply that you can get. But it was amazing that it was from a disease that it really started that look. This has the daffodils. I don't think I've ever seen a colored daffodil that color. Hyacinth. Those are almost good enough to eat. Now, I wanted to mention 3-day trips from Kansas City where you can go and see a tulip festival. The nearest one is Topeka. And I don't know how many of you have been over to Topeka. We as a Master Gardener group have gone there a couple of times. The history of it was that a man named Gerald Binkley started this, and he had a garden on the west edge of Topeka. Our Master Gardener group has gone there several times when he first was doing it. He was doing about 20,000 tulips himself at that time. Age caught up with him, and he couldn't keep up with it. So the Master Gardeners, the garden clubs, and the Parks and Rec took his tulips and replanted them and added more to 3 parks in Topeka. One is at Gage Park, at Old Shawnee Town, and Lake Shawnee. This first group of pictures is from Gage Park. And I got a picture from quite a number of years ago. I didn't put it in here. It's really a beautiful scene. It had a big redbud tree in full bloom with the tulips around this little lake. It's a beautiful picture. But that's, they're going to transform they didn't have the daffodils. So this will probably become a daffodil display in Gage Park. And that usually is in the mid-April. Here is Old Prairie Town. It is an old town. It's on the west edge of Topeka downtown. They have some interesting historical buildings and stuff there, but they also have a botanical garden. And there's really a lot of interesting plants and stuff that they have in there. They have a huge fairy garden display. And again, if you have any inkling or would like, I would highly recommend the Tulip Time at Topeka. Here's some of the fairy gardens. That's only small. They probably had 15 or 20 of them. They had a twilight nighttime display at Old Prairie Town. And that's really neat. They have a lot of the lighted displays and flower beds that are lit up at that time. And then you have Lake Shawnee. And those are some beautiful beds. What they do there, and they did at Gage Park, is that at the end of the tulip thing, they pull all of the tulips out and sell them. And then they plant annuals. So if you go in the summertime, they have all annuals in there where they had tulips. This is a kind of a tribute figurines and statues of his grandchildren. It's entitled, "I'm So Happy." And you can see in the middle, not real well, but they got a rabbit and little bunnies, and the kids are looking at the rabbit. They're looking at the rabbit and the bunnies. Japanese pagoda. The next place is Pella. And if you ever have an opportunity to go a little further away, Pella is a wonderful Dutch community. And they have a festival. Unfortunately, it conflicts with our plant sale a lot of time, but it's in the first weekend of May. And they have 50 to 70,000 people come to that festival. It's pretty nice. This windmill came from Holland. And they had an engineer from Holland. He came back and they reconstructed it in Pella. This mill is only used for grinding of wheat. So they have a milling operation with that windmill. You cannot go to Pella without going to this bakery. This is the Yarsman Bakery. They have lots. Well, I'm pretty sure that they're locale. I'm not positive on that, but I think they are. But they are wonderful. One of their famous things they're for are the Dutch letters. And they are wonderful. The third one is Wamego. I have never been there, but I've talked to people who have, and they said it's a wonderful small tulip festival. You would have to check with the Chamber of Commerce or website of Wamego to find exactly when their one is open, but they have a nice display too.